What's up, everybody? So in case you have not seen it, last week I released a documentary about K3soju called Don't Talk If You Don't Know, The Rise of Soju, that outlines his rise from the Twitch rivals of Set 1 all the way through regionals of Set 7. I'm going to do a little watch through right now. We're actually doing this live on stream at twitch.tv/ganglytft. We're going to be watching through it, and every now and then I'm going to be giving you a little bit of insight and some behind the scenes looks at how this all happened, a little bit of maybe some stories that you may not be able to know or be able to figure out just from watching. So I won't bore you anymore. We'll get right into it, and then we'll see what happens.
Back in 2019, when TFT first launched, the superstars initially were people who had existing audiences on Twitch. Disguised Toast, It's Hafu, Dog, Scara.
There were a lot of streamers that were big, getting like 15, 20,000 viewers, rating each other back and forth.
Everyone loved TFT.
People that were like Milk, like Soju, that came like probably like a month later.
It's
so
wild
funny
to see how
even at this point, right? We're 30 seconds into this doc, and hearing Nature's give this line, right, where he's saying, like, even people like Soju, like TFT, like Soju, like Milk that came later. This part of our actual interview is so far in because Nature's is an actual encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to early TFT. When we actually did this interview, Nature's probably talked for like 10 or 15 minutes just on like PBE and Dota autochess and all the talent that came from other games into TFT before he even got to Soju or Milk. And I didn't have a way to bring it into the actual doc without it like really condensing it and making it a little bit too much or too fatty, I guess. So unfortunately it all got cut. But man, Natures can talk about TFT. Someone asked in chat, where did you take the footage of Bryce, Dan, and Nature? So this is all shot at Set 7 Regionals. So I flew out there because they were all going to be in the studio. I flew out to the Mall of America, and I worked for Wisdom for their media day. And they were gracious enough to let me have some time to interview some of the people there. So I got to do Bryce's interview while he was prepping for media day. And then Nature's was that night. And then Frodan's was even later that night. And interestingly enough, we actually were supposed to have a whole nother interview with Risaka. And unfortunately, she got sick and just like it never happened. And yeah, Kana says in chat, Set 7, this doc has been in the making for a long time. Yes. It started, I pitched this project in September, started pre-production in October, and then shot it in November. So it definitely took a while to get there.
That came like probably like a month later.
it was wild to see how many big streamers from different genres came across just to play this new auto chess thing from Riot. The first time I remember starting to follow TFT streamers and not just my friends from Hearthstone or from other games in the past, maybe I'm a little biased because I helped organize it, but the Twitch Rivals event at TwitchCon, I got to meet a good mixture of TFT main players versus the streamers.
We are here live at the San Diego Convention Center here for
It's
TwitchCon
crazy to see this now because we just haven't seen an event like Twitch Rivals for the entirety of TFT's lifespan post-COVID.
Remind people like, hey, this game can also be played competitively, which was quite a spectacle.
I mean, it was insane. This is the first time that there's a big prize pool and a lot of audience to get people's names out there. It was my first time playing in a...
I love this part. I love when we're introduced to Bryce here. I'm going to try, I don't want to just ramble on over and endlessly, but when Bryce enters the documentary here, and this is another part that didn't make the cut, is he first heard about TFT because he was staying like at a casino or something in like Las Vegas, or maybe he was at an event, and a bunch of poker players that he was in a hotel room with were like, hey, I heard about this game TFT, you want to go play? And so the next day they actually spent the entire day at like a PC, like a LAN center, like PC Bong, whatever, playing TFT all together. And then he went home, started playing, and Dan helped him get into Twitch Rivals. Really, really cool story of like how we obviously eventually got one of our like most iconic community members, and we had him way back at the very beginning in Twitch Rivals, and he did quite well.
On stage, real esports event. We're already having a major event with a massive company behind it. That's what was in my head, is like, this is like the start of TFT getting a tournament scene.
You would
It was
think
like
so.
over 100 people in the open bracket, and it was done in multiple rounds. You had to finish in the top 2 in your lobby to advance. Many of the folks that I was scared of going in were people that I knew well before TFT. Everyone went in knowing Scar was a beast. Everyone went in knowing Hafu was a beast. There were definitely players that were known, but there were plenty of players that are now
the
household
format was
names that
pretty
are in the
crazy,
event,
too.
like Soju, quite frankly, that I think were relatively under the radar, at least from my perspective going in.
He looks young. You can definitely tell.
How would I describe Soju? Oh my god, how much time do we have?
I love this sequence.
Let's see here. I mean, let's start with something that I think most people wouldn't start with, which is great TFT player.
Let me just tell you that, and you'll see Frodan's part of this. When we recorded Frodan's interview, it is literally Frodan giggling for like a minute straight as he's just saying one word adjective answers in between him giggling. Like, it was so funny. There's such an innocence to the way he was laughing. He really had fun with it.
Arrogant.
Fuck you, Toast.
Kind of dumb.
And then this stuff I don't really know, but I think like India is like over here.
Endlessly.
I had a lot of fun digging up all
I
of
don't
these
even care. All of it.
Soju
I pee in the
clips.
pool. I don't give a fuck. It actually feels kind of nice. No cap.
What is he even saying half the time? I don't even get it.
Yes!
That moment right there was actually a Bryce Blum note. Originally, I didn't have that clip there of Soju going, yes, woohoo! And Bryce watched the doc and he left a note saying something along the lines of, you need a clip of Soju spewing nonsense.
We've got 8 people who have a chance to win $45,000 in one game of Teamfight Tactics.
Why did he run forward?
Dude, that's
We're
crazy,
down
the
to top
Blade
3.
Master props.
Afu, Soju, and Shrike.
Double stacked frozen too.
Shred to take the victory.
Rest in peace, Frozen Heart, man.
Seeing Soju do that well in Rivals meant that, hey, I needed to pay more attention.
Oh, yeah,
and I
one
imagine
game.
there were a lot
Best
of
of
people who had
ones,
a very
baby.
similar reaction.
It wasn't just that Soju placed third. The TFT players showed up and showed, hey, look.
Now, this part's
yes,
interesting because Jay
Tides of
Schritt
Time
was
and
like
Toast and
a
Hafu,
tier
they have the
two, I
skill.
think, Heroes of the Storm
But
player, something
we
like that.
dedicate
He
ourselves
was
to
a
TFT, and
competitive
we're
player
showing you
before
that this game you
TFT.
play at an incredible level with consistency.
But I felt like he was still in the. I felt like he was still in the
That's a domino effect.
TFT
because the more
player
people
sphere
pay attention,
more
the
so
they
than
can
like
say, hey,
Hafu
look,
and Skara.
This is actually really cool, and this guy is really funny, and that's how it all snowballs.
Twitch Rivals served as a turning point in Soju's career. Oh wow, Casanova says that he was their teammate in the HCC. That's amazing. And just as a great fire begins with a spark, Soju's career would soon find a fire starter of its own. I don't love
After
these
he'd already grown
voiceovers,
to
I'm not
Twitch
gonna lie. I
Rivals,
wish I could redo
he
them.
had sort of put himself at the level of a mainstay, I guess, in the North American streamers, but Kurum was far and away
Now
the
this
biggest,
part's really
North
fun
Amer-
because there's an interesting part of documentaries where you have to know about the content in order to produce it, right? You have to have a baseline level of understanding so that you can ask the right questions. This was a really cool moment where in my interview with Natures, and it might have been either in the pre-interview or the actual interview, I can't remember, I was under the impression that after Twitch Rivals, Soju had become much more popular than he actually did. And while we were doing this interview, this is Nature's actually correcting me, either here or in the pre-interview. At one point, he's actually correcting me, saying like, no, it wasn't Soju, it was Kurum. And that is actually like the really important catalyst for this next
American,
part
like,
of the
TFT
documentary.
streamer for set 1 and set 2. Kurum not only was bigger than Soju, but he was the #1 most watched TFT streamer. #1. So, Riot announces an event. They announced the set 3 Invitational.
And it was received really poorly because Kerm wasn't there. And the person who called it outright the most was Soju.
He actually streams 1 million fucking hours every single day. #1 most watched TFT channel. And he's consistently high ranked. He streams every single day for 8 hours. Where the fuck is his invite?
Not for himself, he made it very clear in the rant, I remember this vividly. I'm okay with not being there, but Kerm should be there.
There's many sides to Soju. A lot of people know his arrogant front-facing side, but he's always got this really warm, soft spot for his friends.
Surprisingly, but kind of unsurprisingly, because of like how Twitch works, it actually was really good for his viewership. The popularity he got from that, plus the popularity he already had, plus the fact that Set 3's popularity was insane, he spiked ridiculously hard. I also think he broke out of his shell a bit there. I think he was more willing to do more exuberant displays.
Ray!
I love this.
Ray! What the fuck? I'm down 6 gold!
Throughout all of Set 3, he spikes hard and hard and hard, and by the middle of Set 3, it's not close if you compare Soju.
And I remember this too. I remember in Set 3 really
And it
feeling
doesn't
like
stop,
Soju
it
was just
continues to
ascending.
grow every set.
Nature's explained all of this so well.
Some people might ask
very, very
or
potent.
wonder, is this really how Soju, is this really who Michael is? Is he actually himself, or is k3soju a persona?
I think when he's streaming, he's much more...
Another interesting thing to talk about right here is that I had different answers from different subjects. And it all kind of comes together to where I, used the through lines of what everyone was saying, but some of them, and I don't want to call out exactly what everybody said, some of the subjects talked about how they felt like Soju's stream persona is a little bit more accurate, but he also knows how to be a good person. He also knows how to be like a nice professional guy. And some people, like you'll hear, are a little bit more like, no, it's like an act because that's required to be a streamer. And so it's an interesting kind of like contrast depending on like who you ask on how they perceive Soju.
In the mindset of like, I still to be
think
entertaining.
That what's
is
seen
a
here is
really
pretty
nice
honest though.
being,
Very
and
like it's still
the
true.
Kind of character part of it falls away, right? Because let's be honest, streaming, you are in character, whether or not you're Dr. Disrespect and you're like throwing on the makeup and you're doing a whole shtick, or whether or not you're just creating a certain version of yourself that works in that environment. Playing it up on some level, flaming people back, whatever. This is like your armor as a streamer.
And what the fuck do you mean minimizing damage? You fight any other player, your frontline is your fucking Nidalee?
You don't really see it on his
Mine is
stream,
your
like
Nidalee.
he will flame the hell out of someone in his chat. Soju's the person where if I tweet and it's like clear somehow in my tweet that I'm having a terrible day, like he's reaching out to me, he's the first one. Hey, you wanna hop on a call, you wanna talk? And you'll see that not just in the way he speaks to his friends privately, but also like, he's not trying to make himself the solo TFT, he owns the TFT category. He wants to build his friends up.
In a lot of ways, he would rather his friends succeed even more than he is.
Dude, it's so fucking sad.
You're crying for milk?
Dude, it's so sad. Fuck. Dude, I wanted to win Worlds so bad.
I cried.
You already know
when
he's
this
so hard on
happened.
himself.
When he cried
He's
on
down
stream, I
to do
cried.
whatever he can to help his friends and keep building him up. Like, Soju is
And so much about
the
this
person
part.
who really started doing like these 8-person
I
calls.
knew.
And
I knew that I needed footage of Soju at Summit to really flesh out this part of the doc. But Soju, I don't know how many you know, like he didn't go to Summit. He only came for the one day. He wasn't able to actually be at there the entire event. And when that happened, my heart dropped because I thought this doc like is just, I'm not going to have anything. And this whole section would have been so unfulfilling if I couldn't show Soju with other people. You know, it really needed like some sort of human connection to it. And man, I'm really glad that he ended up coming out for a day. Like they worked it all out, and you know what? And I want to give a lot of credit to him because he reached out to me and he was like, hey man, like I know you're doing this thing. I'm letting you know I'm gonna come this day. Like you let me know if you need anything while I'm there. Like I'm down to shoot whatever you need to get to make sure you can get the doc done. Like he was super accommodating for me and really understanding. Soju
and
is
everyone kind of
so
rises
great.
with Soju.
He really
It's not like
is
he
a great
goes
guy.
live and has 15,000 people watching him by accident. He is incredible at what he does. He is super entertaining while also being really good at the game and creating a super compelling viewership product.
It's something that I thought was an inevitability. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. When you look at his personality, I mean, the guy is just a magnet. I'm so glad that events like Twitch Rivals was able to help him get noticed in the first place by some viewers, but he was always...
Oh yeah, he's a super nice guy. And while Soju found success in the form of a massive audience and results at the game's inception, his competitive success did not grow with his following.
But to see Noob Owl and Soju 1 single point behind that cut to day number 2, how close can you possibly get?
Over the course of the next 2 years, Soju would yield middle-of-the-pack performances event after event, with many ending in an early exit. By the middle of 2022, some would even go so far as to say that Soju was merely a TFT influencer and not a competitive threat. Alright, ready for this? The rest of the doc, from before this scene onward, was not supposed to be in the doc. Let me say this because this part's actually crazy. This part and everything onward was not in the original doc. This documentary was supposed to be about k3soju coming up through Twitch Rivals, going through sets 1, 2, 3, spiking at 4, and eventually ending with the scene that we have at the very end. You'll see it later. But why is it that people watch Soju? I had no intentions of covering Set 7 regionals. I was only going to Set 7 regionals because I was trying to get interviews with people. And everything that happened from here on out is because Soju got second at regionals and made it to Worlds. And yeah, actually, Casanova's Cass is in chat. I know YouTube, you won't be able to see this, but Casanova's in chat and knew I wasn't trying to make a documentary about k3soju's run at regionals. It was just about how Soju came up through the ranks and became the figurehead of our scene. But this next scene is the only reason why I was able to include this. And it blows my mind, and I'm so thankful that I had Bryce there.
Excited for this regionals, actually. I know this is going to air after regionals, but this is the first regionals I've been going and thinking of Soju as a favorite at the event, and it would not remotely surprise me to see him qualify for Worlds through this event. I am very tired of the Twitch chatter narrative that Soju was a ladder warrior and that Soju was not actually good at TFT. I think it's fair to say that he's not one of the best 3 tournament players in North America, usually when he enters an event. But if the question is that his skill ceiling? If he tries, if he preps like he has going for this regionals going into event, can he get there? Absolutely he can.
This moment from Bryce was unprompted. I did not ask Bryce what he felt about Soju going into regionals. I'm pretty sure I'd have to review the interview. I'm like 90% confident that this was just because Bryce and I were talking and Bryce started doing his Bryce thing where he just starts riffing. He just starts talking about whatever Bryce wants to talk about. And then he was like, Soju can actually make it to Worlds this time around. He could actually do it. And as soon as Soju placed second, I immediately messaged Bryce on Discord and I was like, you saved my documentary. You changed this whole thing. And it's just so wild to me to think like the way this whole documentary plays out for the next 5 minutes was not going to be in there at all. And it's only because I have this moment from Bryce that I'm actually able to tie it together in a way that really makes sense.
Courtney, the North American TFT Regionals begins now.
With k3soju, a player
So
who
shout out to
hasn't
Bryce.
quite been able
Bryce
to
is
prove that
he's too good.
His tournament history has been a little all over the place.
I think that it's very easy when you're talking about
Nature's here. Hey,
Soju to
Nature's.
just focus on the content and how popular his stream is and think of him as a content creator.
Hopping on to Cloud9 k3soju's perspective, who is on that bubble, needs to have
Another fun story about this motion graphic, where it has all the text kind of coming down. When I was originally cutting this, I was like, I don't really know what to put in those segments. And I knew I needed some sort of motion graphic. And I was like, I need to find inspiration somewhere. And I couldn't find anything. So I remember the moment that it actually clicked in my mind of like what I wanted to show on screen. I was sitting in my office upstairs, which is now where I am right now. It's downstairs. But I was sitting in my chair and I closed my eyes and I'm trying to think of every like sports adjacent movie I've ever watched. And I remembered, and it's actually wild to me that I remembered this. I remembered that Shia LaBeouf's The Greatest Game Ever Played had this montage sequence where they're playing through a golf tournament and there's all of these like scores and names like flickering on this board. And so I talked to Tom, who is the motion designer who worked on some of these graphics. He worked on those ones in particular. And I was like, this is what I want. Like, and I dug up a clip on YouTube as well. And I was like, I need it to feel like it's like scores that are changing constantly because it's so fluid and no matter what happens, like it can change at any moment, blah, blah, blah.
Natural to
and I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Level 7, but this is not
like what you see at a train terminal. Yes, absolutely. Great analogy
but his
or comparison.
Is the gain of Cloud9's k3soju. He needed a top 4 and he got it.
So yeah, this whole sequence, there's something about it, like still trying to figure it out, like it's all fluid, blah, blah, blah.
It is just on you, my friend. All of the pieces are in place. Can you turn this into a top 4? Can you make day 3 at
in the field full of people that have spent a lot of time kind of very intentionally working at their gameplay, Soju has intuited the game.
This so good. Bryce is so concise. I love it.
Such a tight race. Goes down to just 16 and one last chance to fight for that world championship spot. It is Seraphine 3 against Soju's board for his tournament life. Installs, but I just don't think there's enough to get there. Soju's gonna take big damage if all these units survive. Soju, no!
Am I just out?
This is a big moment, and all we can do is wait for those lobby scores. And I just got word, they're here. Soju! No way!
I love Casanova here. Cass is so great.
k3soju!
No way!
Are you kidding me? People thought we were memeing when we predicted him as one of the tournament favorites, but he actually one time really was in peak form.
Frodan wiping his eyes.
If you don't know.
So good.
Like the reason it was just so big for me is because I actually like fully expected.
And so, man, this interview was such a long time coming too, because Soju and I had scheduled this before regionals originally. I was going to interview him before Set 7 regionals, before I went to Minnesota. And he ended up saying, like, you know what, like, I'm not really feeling it. I really want to focus on prep. Can we just talk next week instead? And man, I am so glad that thing got rescheduled, huh? It actually would have been so insane if I had this interview with Soju and then would have had to scrap the whole thing. And man, I mean, I'll let this play out.
It's like TFT is like
I'm gonna let this play out, but I just want to say
like, I really did think I was
Soju was so honest in this interview, and a lot of it honestly is rambling. It actually really is like him just talking and talking and not making like a ton of sense. And a lot of it did come together in post because
when I actually made it to Worlds,
it was such a genuine answer. Like it really felt so off the cuff, and him just talking from his heart. And it really, really made me respect Soju in a very different way than I did just like watching him on stream.
I really want people to think
there's a certain like earnestness that came out of this interview that is hard to capture.
Man, this guy was actually probably like top 5 of all time, not just like unlucky. We lost.
He really believes what he's saying. You know, you can tell.
I'm not gonna crunch it up and cry on cam, so I'm gonna fucking hot.
Look, the reality of Soju is he's a special combination of good at the game, entertaining. There are lots of people out there like that just kind of need a catalyst moment, and then once that happens, it's like, all right, we're off to the races. And it feels like Rivals might have been the start of Soju's journey in that way.
I don't think that Soju needed the tournament at all to put himself as a top player. Just by being on the Twitch Rivals broadcast and doing well is just a way to make himself bigger.
I love it. Okay, so this is kind of a hard thing to really explain. I love Nature's because he is so good at giving his opinion on things. So earlier I talked about how I kind of came in suggesting that, like, no, Twitch made Soju kind of this figurehead. Twitch Rivals made Soju like this figurehead in the scene, and Nature was like, no, it was Kurum. It was actually Soju freaking out about Kurum that made him so popular. In the same way, my question to Soju's here, to Nature's here was like, how did Twitch Rivals enable Soju to become who he is today? And I love, and it's not contrarian. It's like Nature's is so good at just following the lines that he sees in his head to like kind of take that question and say like, well, no, he didn't actually need it, but it gave him something else. It wasn't that it was just him winning so that people thought he was good. It was the first time that he was really platformed in a certain way, and it got eyes on him so that people could recognize this or recognize him.
Which is,
so
in my opinion,
Nature's was so vital for this piece.
People looking at Soju and understanding just how much potential there is for a game like.
And when I look back on this doc, like, it's funny how you really can see each subject of Nature's, Bryce, and Frodan each having different roles in it, right? Nature's is kind of giving this history, the more contextual information, setting up the doc. Bryce is the one that really carries that whole set 7 regionals run, and then you'll see it here that Frodan is really the one that brings us home with this big emotional piece.
I think it's hard to overstate it, quite frankly.
Why do people keep watching Soju?
Why do people keep watching Soju? Because he's real, man. He's real. His shtick about how he has ego and that he trash talks and that he's high skilled, he's all those things, but he's also himself, and that's really authentic. I feel like Fame really hasn't changed him that much, except he plays more Baccarat. And, you know, if that's his worst vice, then I'm all for it, man. I love that guy.
I love this song, too. It's such a banger. I've heard this song about a billion times. Still a banger, though. All right. Well, that does it. I feel like I gave you guys a decent amount of the behind the scenes. There's definitely still some more stuff, but I mean, to kind of summarize, it's like this doc ended up being much different than it was supposed to be. I started the pitch in September, started pre-production in October, and as soon as Soju made Worlds, the whole thing changed. And I'm really, really thankful to all of the subjects for really carrying this piece. They made it very, very easy to put together. So thank you I don't know if Natures and Bryce and Dan are watching, but if you guys are, all three of you, thank you so much. Seriously, this would not have come together without the three of you. And Bryce definitely was like a really great asset later on in the post-production too. He asked when he could watch it. He asked if he could give me notes. Like, he really did put some time in to try and make this thing as best as it could be. So, and shout out to everyone who really just came out of the woodwork and you know, sent me a DM or messaged me on Discord just to say that you liked it. I know I've said it a million times on stream today, but like, I have felt so much love from the scene with the production of this piece. And I'm really, really grateful that I had the opportunity to do this. I think I could ramble on and on forever about this kind of stuff because I love documentary. I really love capturing the moments in history that I think define us. And I think I got really, really lucky with this. I think that Soju is an amazing subject. I think that Bryce, Dan, and Nature's all killed it. And I think the fact that the stars aligned for this whole set 7 thing made this just really, really impossible to plan. And I'm grateful that all the stars aligned to make it what it was. I don't know if I'd be able to do it again if I had to, but I'm grateful that I was at least able to do it once. Thank you guys so much for watching the documentary. I hope that you got a little bit more out of it than you would if you just watched it. If you haven't already seen the version where I'm not talking over it, make sure to check out Metafy's YouTube channel. It's at Try Metafy, where you can watch the Soju documentary for yourself. Again, thank you all for the support, and I hope you enjoyed it.